Welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is March 30th. On this day in 1985, Derek and Nancy Haysom, a prominent couple from Bedford County, Virginia, were killed in their home. This case not only shocked the local community, but also garnered international attention due to the involvement of their daughter, Elizabeth Haysom, and her boyfriend, Yen Soering. Today, we'll talk about how young love and manipulation led to murder. Let's get started. Derek William Reginald Haysom was a 72-year-old retired steel executive known for his leadership roles in Nova Scotia, Canada. His wife, Nancy Astor Benedict Haysom, aged 53, was an artist. Together, they were esteemed members of their community and lived in a beautiful home in the Boonesboro area of Bedford County, Virginia. Their blended family included 5 children from previous marriages, among whom was Elizabeth Roxanne Haysom, who was born in April 1964. Elizabeth had a privileged and international upbringing, attending boarding schools in Switzerland and England before attending college at the University of Virginia. It was there in 1984 that she met Yen Soering, an 18-year-old German national and fellow student. The two quickly became inseparable, forming a relationship that would later be scrutinized in the wake of her parents' murders. Elizabeth Haysom and Yen Soering's relationship was intense. Their bond was characterized by a deep but tumultuous connection that influenced their actions and decisions leading up to the murders of Derek and Nancy Haysom. During their time apart over the 1984-1985 winter break, Elizabeth and Yen exchanged letters that included expressions of intense emotions, and notably, discussions that hinted at violent fantasies. Yen's letters contained references to possessing the ultimate weapon when meeting Elizabeth's parents. Elizabeth's letters reciprocated these sentiments and expressed deep-seated animosity toward her parents and, in some instances, a desire for their demise. During her 1987 trial, Elizabeth later said that she didn't believe at the time that Jens would take her writings literally. But those letters show that their relationship was not only passionate, but also involved shared discussions that blurred the lines between imagination and the gruesome reality that would become a double murder. On March 30th, 1985, Derek and Nancy Haysom were brutally murdered in their Bedford County home. The scene wasn't discovered until days later. When police arrived, investigators found Derek's body in the dining room with evidence that indicated he had tried to defend himself against his attacker. He suffered a total of 36 stab wounds, primarily in the torso and arms, along with a deep slash across his throat. Nancy's body was discovered in the kitchen. She sustained 6 stab wounds, one of which was a deep laceration to her neck, indicating that the attacker had aimed to quickly incapacitate her. The nature and the extent of the injuries pointed to a frenzied attack and suggested that the assailant harbored significant rage or personal animosity toward the victims. There were signs of an intense confrontation, including overturned furniture, extensive blood spatter, and defensive wounds on both victims, especially Derek. The discovery of the murders sent shockwaves through the small community, particularly due to the sheer brutality of the killings and the fact that there was initially no clear suspect or motive. Though the crime appeared to be intensely personal, there were no immediate leads. The Haysoms didn't have any known enemies. Investigators meticulously combed through the gruesome crime scene, documenting bloodstains, collecting forensic evidence, and attempting to reconstruct the violent confrontation. Early on, authorities interviewed friends, family members, and acquaintances of the Haysoms in an effort to find potential suspects who had motive to harm the couple. As they pieced together the timeline, investigators turned their attention to Elizabeth Haysom and her boyfriend Yen Soering, because something about the story that they gave to investigators just didn't sit right. Elizabeth and Yen claimed that they had spent the weekend in Washington, D.C., but investigators quickly became suspicious when rental car records showed significantly more mileage than a round trip between Charlottesville and D.C. Authorities then discovered credit card transactions that placed the couples in areas that were also inconsistent with this trip. Sensing that police were onto them, Elizabeth and Yen abruptly fled the United States in October 1985, initially traveling through Europe and Asia under false identities. This prompted investigators to issue international arrest warrants. On April 30th, 1986, British authorities apprehended Elizabeth and Yen in London, where they faced unrelated charges of check fraud. British police quickly connected them to outstanding warrants from the United States and notified Virginia authorities. Upon being questioned separately, Jens initially confessed the murders, claiming that he acted alone to protect Elizabeth. He detailed the events of March 30th, 1985, telling investigators that he drove to the Haysom residence and committed the killings, while Elizabeth remained in Washington, D.C. to establish an alibi. He later recanted his confession, though, saying that he falsely confessed because he believed that diplomatic immunity would protect him due to his father's status as a German diplomat. Elizabeth, on the other hand, admitted to her involvement in planning the murders and attempting to cover them up, but maintained that Jens was the one who did the actual killings. She portrayed herself as being manipulated and suggested that his obsessive love for her led him to eliminate her parents, whom he viewed as obstacles to their relationship. As authorities delved deeper into the couple's relationship, they uncovered those letters that I had mentioned earlier. And these letters really provided the key and significantly influenced the subsequent prosecution and the broader public perception of the case. Elizabeth Haysom's legal proceedings concluded relatively swiftly. In 1987, she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of accessory to murder before the fact. During her sentencing, Elizabeth expressed remorse and detailed her involvement in orchestrating the plan to kill her parents. The court sentenced her to 2 consecutive 45-year terms, totaling 90 years in prison. Her guilty plea and acceptance of responsibility spared her from a potential capital murder charge and the death penalty. Soering's trial, however, was more protracted and garnered significant media attention. He was finally extradited to the United States after assurances that he would not face the death penalty. The prosecution presented his initial confessions, detailed knowledge of the crime scene, and forensic evidence, including a bloody sock print that matched his foot size. They argued that Jens's actions were driven by his obsessive love for Elizabeth and his desire to remove any barriers to their relationship, basically going with the story that Elizabeth had given. The defense contended that Yen's confession was coerced and that he had falsely admitted guilt to protect Elizabeth, believing that he had diplomatic immunity. They also said that there really wasn't any direct physical proof linking Jens to the murders. Despite these arguments, the jury found Jens guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms. The murders of Derek and Nancy Haysom and the subsequent convictions of their daughter Elizabeth and her boyfriend left an indelible mark on the Bedford County community and beyond. This case, with the involvement of young, educated individuals from privileged backgrounds, captured the public's attention for the next several decades. In the years following their convictions, both Elizabeth and Jens pursued multiple appeals and parole requests, each maintaining their different narratives about their roles in the murders. Yen, in particular, garnered considerable international support, especially from Germany, where many believed in his innocence or argued for leniency due to his age at the time of the crime and his claims of a wrongful conviction. His case became a cause célèbre, leading to petitions, documentaries, and extensive media coverage in both the United States and in Europe. Elizabeth, while less publicly vocal, expressed remorse for her actions and served her sentence with relative quietness. She occasionally participated in interviews and reflected on her decisions and the consequences. This case inspired numerous books, investigative reports, and documentaries, including the 2016 film Killing for Love, which re-examined the evidence and raised questions about the fairness of Jens's trial. This renewed public interest contributed to legal reconsiderations and, ultimately, the parole of both individuals. After more than 3 decades behind bars, both Elizabeth and Jens were granted parole in November 2019. Elizabeth was deported to Canada, where she sought to live a private life, while Jens returned to Germany, becoming an advocate for criminal justice reform and wrongful conviction cases. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!